When you think of legendary ocean pioneers, Columbus discovering the New World, Magellan circumnavigating the globe, Jacques Cousteau exploring the deep, or Ernest Shackleton surviving Antarctic ice, you'd never imagine that one of history's most audacious maritime journeys was accomplished by a 57-year-old grandfather from Long Island. This is the story of one of the greatest seamen to ever conquer the Atlantic in the most insane way possible. Picture battling Hurricane Claudette in a 26-foot boat, falling overboard mid-Atlantic, and surviving on nothing but Evinrude outboards and sheer determination. This man didn't just cross 3,000 miles of hostile ocean, he redefined what's possible with ordinary engines and extraordinary courage. On October 21st, we're celebrating a living legend who turns 98 and whose 1985 voyage still makes modern sailors shake their heads in disbelief. Let me take you back to August 17, 1985, just 16 days after leaving St. Pierre, Newfoundland. The night Al Grover and his son thought they were going to die. Hurricane Claudette wasn't just another Atlantic storm, it was a Category 1 monster with 85 miles per hour winds that had already terrorized the Caribbean. Now it had found two men from Freeport, New York, in a boat smaller than most people's living rooms. The waves. Imagine 3-story buildings made of water, moving at highway speeds. Each one could flip, crush, or simply swallow their 26-foot Grover-built hull. The wind screamed so loud they couldn't hear each other speak. Salt spray hit like buckshot, and in the pitch-black night, the only thing visible was the white foam of breaking waves seconds before they crashed into the boat. Here's what nobody talks about. The boat wasn't just fighting waves, it was fighting physics. With 700 gallons of fuel aboard, they had only 10 inches of freeboard. That's less than a ruler's length between survival and sinking. Every wave that broke over the bow added hundreds of pounds of water that had to be pumped out before the next one hit. Al Grover turned to his son Al Jr. and said words no father should ever have to say, "I don't think we're going to make it through the night." They said their goodbyes. Al told his son he'd lived a good life, been blessed. Al Jr.'s response, "What about me? I'm still young. I'm not ready to die." For 36 hours, they rode it out. The Evinrude motors, designed for calm lakes, not hurricane seas, screamed in protest as the propellers spent as much time in the air as underwater. When waves lifted the entire boat airborne, the engines would over-rev wildly before crashing back into the ocean, with a sound Grover described as like dropping a car into a swimming pool. Stay tuned if Al Grover inspired you to become a person of the water, and trust me, after you hear what happened when he fell overboard, you'll understand why his story changed boating forever. Let's talk about what made this crossing revolutionary from an engineering standpoint. In 1985, nobody, and I mean nobody, was putting multiple outboards on boats for ocean crossings. Grover essentially invented the modern multi-engine offshore setup out of necessity. The main power came from twin 65-horsepower Evinrude 3-cylinder engines. These weren't special ocean-rated motors, they were the same engines you'd find at your local marina, designed for bass fishing and water skiing. The third engine, a 9.9-horsepower Evinrude, was supposed to be the backup. It ended up powering 2/3 of the entire journey. Think about that. A motor with less power than a riding lawnmower pushed a 26-foot boat loaded with 700 gallons of gasoline across the Atlantic Ocean. It's like crossing the Sahara Desert in a golf cart. The fuel consumption was insane. Those 2-stroke engines burned through gas like a teenager through a trust fund. They needed 700 gallons to make the crossing. That's more fuel than most cars use in an entire year. The boat became a floating bomb, one spark away from becoming a fireball. But here's the genius part. Grover's triple-engine redundancy meant that when one engine needed maintenance, he could switch to another without stopping. He changed spark plugs in rolling seas, cleaned carburetors while waves crashed over the transom, and performed mid-ocean repairs that would challenge a mechanic in a fully equipped shop. Day 12 of the crossing. The seas were rolling and heavy, and Al Jr. had gone below to catch some sleep. Al Sr., without clipping on a safety line, because real men in 1985 apparently didn't need them, went to the stern to lower the auxiliary motor. The boat lurched. Al Grover, at 57 years old, went flying overboard into the North Atlantic. Picture this: you're alone in the ocean, 1,000 miles from the nearest land. The water is cold enough to kill you in hours. Your boat, with your sleeping son aboard, is motoring away. Every second it gets smaller. Every second your chances of survival drop. Grover didn't just float there accepting his fate. This 57-year-old grandfather turned into Michael Phelps, swimming after his boat, yelling at the top of his lungs, fighting the Atlantic Ocean with nothing but determination and whatever prayers he could manage between strokes. Meanwhile, Al Jr. was sleeping in the cabin, oblivious to the drama. His father was literally racing death in the ocean while he dreamed. Finally, and nobody knows exactly how long this took, Al Jr. woke up. He came topside to find the boat running with nobody at the helm, and his father's voice, barely audible over the engines, screaming from somewhere in the darkness behind him. The rescue wasn't easy. Turning a boat around in heavy seas without running over the person you're trying to save requires skill and luck. They had both. Al Grover climbed back aboard, soaking wet, exhausted, but alive. Most people would have called it quits right there. Grover, he wrung out his clothes and kept going. Here's where the story becomes more than just man versus ocean. When they reached the Azores after surviving Hurricane Claudette, Al Jr. had enough. He jumped ship, literally refusing to get back on board. Can you blame him? They'd just been through hell, and there were still 900 miles to go. Al Grover called his wife Rosemary from Flores. After 72 years of marriage, she's 94 now, and Al still credits her for giving him the courage to do the crossing. She knew her husband better than anyone. He was exhausted, beaten down, ready to quit. "I'm finished," he told her. "Al's gone, and I'm dead tired. I can't go on." This is the moment that defines not just Al Grover, but the entire Grover family. Rosemary, affectionately named Artie by Al for her beautiful artistic work and nature, could have said, "Come home, honey, you've done enough." Instead, this woman who'd stood by him for decades said something that changed everything. "You have to finish. If you come home now, you'll be a beaten man." She didn't just offer emotional support. She took action. She dispatched their next son, Dante, who would later take over the family marina, to the Azores to complete the journey with his father. The family wasn't going to let this dream die in the middle of the Atlantic. When Dante arrived and stepped aboard, everything changed. The weather, which had been hellish for 3 weeks, suddenly turned calm. The final leg from the Azores to Portugal was, in Dante's words, water skiing flat. It was as if the Atlantic had tested them enough and decided to let them pass. Like this video if you want to wish Al a happy 98th birthday, because what happened next proved that sometimes the best journeys are shared between fathers and sons. September 3rd, 1985. After 33 days at sea, 26 of them actually underway, the Grover-built transatlantic approached Lisbon, Portugal. The Evinrude distributor for Spain and Portugal was there waiting, along with a small crowd who couldn't believe what they were seeing. This wasn't some mega yacht with a professional crew. This was a 26-foot boat that looked like it had been through a blender, powered by outboard motors that sounded, according to witnesses, like coffee grinders full of gravel. Yet they were still running. After 3,000 miles, Hurricane Claudette, mechanical abuse that would have destroyed lesser engines, those Evinrudes were still firing. The Portuguese media went crazy. Here were these Americans, a father and son from Long Island, who'd just done something that shouldn't have been possible. They'd crossed the Atlantic in what was essentially a large fishing boat with department store motors. Back home in Freeport, they declared Al Grover Day. President Ronald Reagan sent a personal letter of congratulations. The Guinness Book of World Records confirmed it. First successful transatlantic crossing in an outboard-powered boat. A record that stands to this day because, frankly, nobody else has been crazy enough to try it the way Grover did. That very boat, the one that battled Hurricane Claudette and made history, has just undergone a complete restoration, ready to inspire new generations with its battle scars and glory. Grover's crossing didn't just set a record, it revolutionized the marine industry. Before 1985, outboards were for lakes and bays. After Grover, everything changed. That triple-engine setup everyone mocked. Today you can't walk through a marina without seeing boats with twin, triple, even quad outboards. The idea that outboards could handle serious offshore work. Grover proved it when those Evinrude survived Hurricane Claudette. Evinrude sales jumped the year after Grover's crossing. They ran ads with a simple message: "The Atlantic tested." No explanation needed. Every boat dealer in America had a story to tell, and it all started with, "Did you hear about the guy who crossed the Atlantic with outboards?" Today, offshore fishing boats routinely sport multiple outboards totaling over 1,800 horsepower. The engines are more refined, sure, but the concept, multiple outboards for reliability and power, that was all Grover. He didn't just cross an ocean. He crossed the marine industry from one era into another. Here's something most people don't know. Grover's journey wasn't finished when he reached Portugal. The next summer, he returned with Artie and their daughters to complete a mission that had nothing to do with records and everything to do with respect. He took that same boat, the one that had survived Hurricane Claudette, and navigated through the canals of Europe. Barcelona, through France, through Germany, all the way to Norway. Why? To bring the boat to the place of Ole Evinrude, the man who invented the outboard motor. The farm where Ole Evinrude was born was called Evinrude, Norwegian for good earth. Grover brought these motors home, completing a circle that started with a Norwegian immigrant's invention and ended with an American dealer's determination to honor that legacy. For 5 years, that boat sat on the Evinrude farm in Norway, a testament to what the descendant of Viking technology could accomplish. It was Grover's way of saying thank you to the man whose invention had carried him across the Atlantic. Al Grover didn't just cross an ocean, he built a dynasty. Starting with nothing but a GI loan after serving as a paratrooper in World War II, he purchased a building on what would become Freeport's famous nautical mile. That was 1950. Today, 75 years later, Al Grover's Marine is an institution. The business has been in the family for 3 generations. Son Dante took over in 1978 and transformed it into one of Long Island's premier marinas. They've got high and dry storage for 140 boats, 150 floating docks, and represent brands like Grady White, Pursuit, Regal, and Cobalt. But here's what matters. They still fix boats the same way Al did, with honesty, expertise, and the knowledge that every boat that leaves their yard carries someone's dreams. The sign says Al Grover's Marine, but locals just call it Grover's. When you've been taking care of a community's boats for 75 years, you've earned the right to be on a first-name basis. 5 children, 13 grandchildren, and a legacy that extends from Freeport to Portugal to Norway. Not bad for a kid who started out clamming in Freeport, working party boats for $2 a day plus tips. Al Grover didn't just battle a voyage of hell, he conquered it and came back to build something even greater. The crossing proved what's possible when someone refuses to accept limitations, and the decades that followed showed what happens when that same spirit gets passed down through generations. The family business that started with a GI loan in 1950 continues today, now in the hands of those who understand what it means to keep dreams afloat. When Dante took over Al Grover's Marine in 1978, he carried forward the same values his father had established: honesty, expertise, and the understanding that every boat leaving the yard carries someone's dreams. Al Jr., who survived that hurricane and lived to tell the tale, became part of a story that would inspire countless others to push their own boundaries. The entire Grover family, Al Jr., Dante, Sean, daughters Joanne and Andrea, and their mother Rosemarie, who stood by Al through every impossible dream, spent decades getting people out on the water, building a legacy that would touch thousands of boaters' lives. The restored Grover-built transatlantic still carries its battle scars from Hurricane Claudette, a floating testament to what ordinary equipment and extraordinary courage can accomplish together. After 3,000 miles of ocean, 36 hours of hurricane, and one grandfather's swim for survival, those Evinrude motors proved that sometimes the craziest ideas are exactly the ones worth pursuing. At 98, Al Grover has outlived most of his critics, all of his doubters, and even some of the boat brands he used to sell. When asked about the crossing now, he'll tell you with a slight grin that he was out of his mind to attempt it. But then comes the truth that matters most. When you survive something like that hurricane, you have a much greater appreciation for being alive. That appreciation didn't just shape one man's life, it shaped an industry. The triple-engine setup everyone mocked in 1985 is now standard in marinas worldwide. The idea that outboards could handle serious offshore work became accepted wisdom, and somewhere in all of this, a family business on Long Island's nautical mile became a monument to the idea that with hard work, integrity, and maybe a little insanity, the impossible becomes achievable. The ocean remembers those who dare to challenge it. 40 years after that crossing, the story still resonates because it reminds us that adventure doesn't have an age limit, that family becomes the greatest support system when things turn desperate, and that the horizon always holds possibility for those brave enough to chase it. From everyone celebrating this milestone, the boating community, the dreamers looking at distant horizons, and all those who've been inspired by this tale, here's to 98 years of life, 75 years of service, and one absolutely insane Atlantic crossing that changed everything. Fair winds, following seas, and may the Evinrudes always keep running. This is the channel for stories of legends who are still with us, still inspiring us, and in Al Grover's case, still probably checking the weather and thinking about the next adventure. The legend continues. Happy birthday, Al.